Issue 3, Around the World in 12 Minutes.
A few global stories of note developed this week. China continued to up the pressure on President Trump, with a state media editorial lambasting him for failed coronavirus leadership. The British Prime Minister and his girlfriend had a child. Kim Jong-un remained radio silent, although, as I have reported, he is not critically ill. And the World Food Programme warned that the coronavirus might lead 250 million more people into food poverty. Oh, and the US Navy released 3 videos of UFOs.
Clarence, what's your pick of those foreign policy and UFO-related stories? What piques your curiosity this week?
Well, I think a UFO is coming to pick up Kim. That's why we haven't seen him lately. But no, seriously, though, it's certainly quite a mystery that North Korea set up for us. And this is not entirely new. And they love to see us speculate like crazy, but at the same time, there's also a lot of questions about the stability of Kim and what his future is, and sort of set up a lot of gossip over here about whether his sister might take over. That's not the sort of thing that's really good for their future. I look to China to give us some indications of what's happening in North Korea. They're more familiar than we are, and they don't seem to be any less opaque than North Korea is right now. So I expect I'm going to keep on reading your stories, Tom, and get that inside word from the intelligence community.
Well, thank you, Clarence. And Pat, what are your thoughts on these news stories this week?
I agree with Clarence. I think the most interesting is the dictator Kim Jong-un in North Korea. But I do notice that he's in Wonsan, which is a port on the Sea of Japan, not the Pacific, as you wrote, Tom. And in there, he's got his armored train there, and he's got his yachts and boats. So I don't know. I'm inclined to agree with you. He's taken some serious time off, and he is not dead now, because I think if he were dead, we would see signs of real activity going on. But I think that this is the most interesting, because I think when he goes and if he goes, I think you have a real potential for an uprising and an overthrow of the whole dynasty in North Korea. And the whole world will be watching that intently.
Eleanor.
Well, when you say when he goes and if he goes, I believe he's a man in his 30s. So unless the rumors are true that he's had some serious operation or whatever, we really don't know about his mortality. But the president has invested a lot in his personal relationship with him. And there's not much connection between the State Department and other people in the government bureaucracy there, and Kim has total control of the nuclear weapons. So I think I would feel better if the government were more prepared, if we had some people functioning in our national security community. There are many actings now, and the president has basically hollowed out a lot of the positions that would normally be interacting with North Korea. So I think there's concern there. But the much bigger problem is the pandemic and how it's rolling around this planet. And we are fortunate in this country, and yet we have more infections in this country than in any other country in the world. And we are in a better position to handle with it. But what happens if it gets into some of the refugee camps in Syria? I mean, if it gets into Africa and the poor people there who are already struggling, I just think there are a lot of horror stories ahead. And I would feel a lot better if the president weren't trying to undermine the World Health Organization. And I would feel better if he didn't have such a dim view of foreign aid. We have a responsibility as the only superpower to help other people, other countries.
Tiana, your thoughts on the idea that actually, the US requires greater kind of cooperation from the WHO in return for funding, as President Trump says, or whether, to Eleanor's point, the risks to vulnerable populations are now so severe that, frankly, any political disagreements we have with the WHO, World Food Programme, etc., should be put aside. The globalist kind of mentality, if you will.
I mean, this is a good moment for if you want to go down the neoliberal track and point out something where the protectionist wing of Trumpism really got it wrong, it would be the Trans-Pacific Partnership, obviously, because that would have made it so that more supply chains were actually moved out of China. It would have made it so that way trade among the Pacific Rim would have excluded China. Instead, Trump decided to kind of exclude everyone and not really have this targeted trade war. And that was probably one of the biggest failures of his early presidency. But with regards to the World Health Organization, I mean, let's be real. Second to the Chinese Communist Party, they're more responsible than any other entity on the planet of the mass transmission of this disease. They were uncritically promulgating Chinese lies, such as, when China said that there was no human-to-human transmission, when they claim originally it's in the specific Wuhan seafood market, when increasingly that doesn't look like it's true, given the fact that, first of all, it's a bat-borne illness, and the seafood market sells seafood, not bats. And also that similar coronaviruses were being investigated in the Wuhan Institute of Virology just a few miles away. Mind you, experiments that the State Department had received warnings about just a few years prior. So quite frankly, if Xi Jinping wants to ramp up this war against Trump, there's not going to be one issue that galvanizes the Republican Party more to unite, from the libertarian wing to the Nikki Haley, Dan Crenshaw wing to the protectionist wing, that will win him re-election, especially if it looks like Democrats are weak on China.
Will win him re-election even if all those clips are played where he's praising China way into February. There are facts here. And while the World Health Organization was making decisions in real time, and they certainly did not get it right, they got it right a lot earlier than President Trump did, and President Trump acted on it.
There's a danger that the Republican Party,
one at a time, one at a time.
The danger that the Republican Party which going after China this fall and is going hard and heavy, and Trump's advisors are the political advisors of the RNC and others are urging it to go after. They're going to lock the Republican Party into an agenda, though, which if Trump is reelected, stand up to China, you're going to have a hard time developing the policies that go with it. We're going to be marching into a second Cold War with China. They ought to think that through before they make China the big issue, I think, in 2020.
Joe Biden's no stranger to foreign policy either, and he's already somewhat toughened up his stance, but not as tough as Trump. So we'll see.
Pat, let me ask you, what do you think should be the crunch issue? If you were whispering in the president's ear, what would you say? You're down in the polls, get on this. Immigration reform? Or
I would say everybody knows you're for immigration reform. You've got to get Joe Biden out there and expose him for who he is and what he is. And he is your opponent. That's the one you go after. I remember when I was in Nixon's White House, people were saying in '72, Nixon should talk about the economy. I said, the economy, you got George McGovern over there, who's miles outside of the mainstream American politics.
So Tom, how do I hitch a ride on one of those UFOs?
Yeah, well, see, this is the interesting, another sort of interesting story this week. And as we previously discussed on the show, it is an issue that I think a lot of journalists, for some good reasons, but not so many good reasons, are concerned about touching. I think the interesting point, though, of the Navy releasing the videos itself, and President Trump again commenting on it, is that this is not an issue that is going away, and hopefully will continue to generate more media interest. I mean, do any of the panelists see any prospect of that?
What did Trump say? What did Trump say? Yeah, what did Trump say about it? I missed that.
Trump said in the end of a Reuters interview on Thursday that he thought that, actually on Wednesday, that he wasn't sure. Well, if it's an odd video or something like that, but he wasn't sure if they're real. So I sort of wrote about that a little bit today, which I think is more of a representation of the Navy briefings on it, and they don't know what they are. So, but they know they're not from China or Russia, which is interesting. Anyway, Clarence.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tom, you talk about an issue that won't go away. We've been chasing UFOs since 1948, at least, and it's we still haven't gotten any farther. But we got a few more pictures that look very similar. But no, this doesn't go away. It's something that fascinates us here on Earth as we look up at the sky and we see strange lights coming in. Initially, back in the 50s and all, they thought that maybe these UFOs may be weapons from Russia or some other enemy of the moment. But the stories still go on, and a number of new presidents when they came in office. I remember Bill Clinton, when he got into office, wanted to see the UFO file. And I never asked Barack Obama, but I bet he probably did too.
Well, I used to associate this with, you know, when people with the propeller hats on or whatever. And I liked it better when they were focused on UFOs than when they're focused on creating scenarios about Joe Biden is losing it in his basement. I think it's the same sort of chain of thought. It includes a lot of sort of wishful thinking about how political campaigns.
Why doesn't he come out, Eleanor?
Why doesn't he come out? Because he's respecting the stay in place. Why is that?
Cuomo is a
Why don't
governor, and
you
he's
come
up
out?
front every day.
Right.
Besides, he's ahead in the
there will
polls,
be
Pat.
time
He
He's
should
for
have come
him
out.
to
presidential
come out.
nominee.
The
All right.
the president has not left the White House for quite some time. He's
Well,
now thinking of traveling perhaps to some swing
Tell
states.
Joe to come out on the lawn. Even Cuomo's brother came out of hiding.
He has been out on his porch communicating with his grandchildren. They've talked about that. You know, this is such obvious character assassination, Pat. I'm sort of mad at myself that I take the bait. I should just smile like you're smiling and
All right.
not cry.
Okay. Tiana, I will give you the concluding word here on any of these issues you wish.
I also hope that people realizing with regards to the food shortages, it's not only abroad. You know, here at home, the CEO of Tyson's warning that our meat chains are falling apart. So yes, first and foremost is preventing death. But also includes making sure that supply chains can feed people.
Okay. All right.